Branding is what? So branding is not a decoration, it's not a design, it is not some fancy way of making nice products and making content around it. Hi everyone, my name is Rishabh Sagar. I'm a brand strategist and I'm making this video to help you learn about some war strategies that you can use for your brand that will ultimately help you win the market. So let's get started. So the main core idea is branding is what, right? So branding is not a decoration, it's not a design, it is not some fancy way of making nice products and making content around it and calling it that's branding. I don't believe that. The ultimate goal of any business or a brand is to make money, right? To capture market, to to like initiate a successful conversion of turning a prospect into a customer, right? Getting more sales, clearing out your inventory. Like these are your goals. And how can you think like it's not a war? It's a war. You're really competing with a lot of competitors, a lot who are ready to fight with you, who are ready to steal your customers and your market share. So the thing is, branding is often spoken about, it's about storytelling, aesthetics, or vibe. It is not. And at its most serious level, branding is a competitive strategy. A positioning is war for mental territory. Market share is the new land. Competitors are scarce resource. Distribution, relevance, trust, and attention are the supply lines. The real purpose of branding is not self-expression. It is to occupy a positioning so strong, so clear, so defensible that customers choose you over everyone else every single time. So this is really important. So I believe the war never stopped happening. Well, apparently it's still happening in Iran and US, right? The conflict that's been going on between them. But I believe it is not just limited between two nations. Businesses are fighting with each other, and that is also a war. So a nation can fight over land, resources, right? Uh, over boundary, over a region. But brands fight over a very different thing. Businesses in general, they fight over market share, mental availability, and loyalty, pricing power, category dominance. So these are the things that brands usually fight over. And brand positioning is the new word, right? So for those people who don't know about brand positioning, I'll tell you. So brand positioning is the position you have in your customer's mind. And apparently, like it does not really happen in the physical market itself. It happens in the mind, and what distinct place you occupy in customer's mind really determine your success of your business. So here's my core idea. Does writing a positioning statement fixes your brand or defines your brand positioning? Well, in reality, it does not. That's why I've made this video. So like it's very easy. You go to ChatGPT, you ask it to like make a positioning statement for your brand and it can do it in a minute. But that's not how it happens. There should be some logical strategy behind it, right? That should act as an argument that why this positioning statement is the most appropriate one for you and why it supports your business goals, right? So I think that's why I believe positioning statements are little vague in its application. That's why I rely on matrix charts a lot. They are much more helpful in visualizing the competition, and we can clearly see where does the competitors occupy the spaces and where we should occupy our space. So the screen will show you a few examples, and it's really easy, right? So now the time has come. Now let's look at some war strategies. So there are 8 in total that we're going to discuss, right? And also there's a bonus one as well in the end, which is the most important one for you, like if you want to crack branding in 2026. So the first war tactic or the strategy that we must learn is know your enemy and know yourself. Intelligence gathering as the first weapon. Sun Tzu wrote, Know the enemy, know yourself. In 100 battles, you will never be in peril. In warfare, this means gathering intelligence on enemy strength, weakness, plans, while being brutally honest about your own capabilities. Military commanders who invested in foreknowledge routinely outmaneuvered rivals before the first shot was fired. Intercepting battle plans and breaking enemy codes tipped the scale of history. In business, competitive intelligence is the equivalent strategic weapon. Conduct rigorous SWOT analysis on your brand and your key competitors and know what do you do well, where you are exposed and where they are weak. Leveraging all data, sales figure, customer reviews, industry reports to map competitive landscape. The brand that understands the terrain better will anticipate threats, spot opportunities before everyone else does. So, so here we go. So to give you a good example, like how studying competitors can really help you look out for opportunities and gaps in the market is this. Like the brand is I'm going to like feature on this video is Oatly. Oatly is a very good example of knowing the market and knowing yourself can directly shape better branding and positioning. Oatly did not just jump into the market randomly. They first scanned the market properly. They looked at the core problem, what was missing, what people were not getting, and who were they were actually up against. And they knew clearly that they were not just competing with small plant-based brands. They were competing with massive dairy giants. So they had to find a sharp angle. So what they realized was that there were fewer vegan and cruelty-free options in the market. But beyond that, the category itself had another problem. Most of the products felt serious, very functional, very boring. They lacked personality. They did not really appeal to younger audience. This is where Oatly made a smart move. Instead of behaving like a traditional food brand, they chose a much more anti-corporate tone. They used bold, weird, highly recognizable packaging. They made the brand feel opinionated, expressive, and culturally alive. So they were not just selling oat milk as product, they were turning it into a movement. And that helped them do two things at once. It helped them win a younger audience, and it also helped them build a more premium positioning in the market. And like this is good in in explanation, but I'll tell you like how it mainly happens. So this thing the part I'm going to cover right now, it will be explained much more in detail in later tactics of this video, but I'll give you a sneak peek. So these are competitor analysis profile pages where we are trying to study all our competitors on their strength, on their weakness, on their brand identity, on their verbal identity, their positioning, their pricing and offer, right? It's a well comprehensive document that is used to know our competitors and know ourselves as well. Don't worry, I'm going to explain in much more detail in the later part of this video. Our second tactic is to win without fighting. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Direct confrontation with your rival is costly and destructive. The greatest general sought victory through maneuver, strategy, or diplomacy, and making battle unnecessary. This is the highest form of warfare, breaking the enemy's resistance without an all-out clash. If you really want to win the market, you have to make the competition irrelevant, right? Not always fighting your enemy head-to-head is a nice idea. Sometimes you have to look for ways from where you can really win the fight without fighting. Okay, so the first principle is the blue ocean principle. Instead of battling in a crowded, bloody market, innovate into an uncontested space where you have no direct competitors. The goal is to not beat the competition at their game. It is to change the game entirely in making their strengths irrelevant and their advantages obsolete. I have a good example for this. Spotify. One of the most fascinating examples of blue ocean principle, making fighting irrelevant and winning without fighting, is Spotify. Before Spotify, people had to buy individual songs or albums. The whole experience was transactional, complicated. Then Spotify came in and changed the battleground. It did not try to compete with players like iTunes by selling songs better. Instead, it said, why buy music one by one when you can access the entire library through a subscription? Spotify did not fight harder in the existing market. It created a new one And by doing that, it forced incumbents like Apple to leave their comfort zone and move beyond iTunes and respond with Apple Music. This is what winning without fighting looks like. The smartest brands do not always beat competitors by attacking them directly. Sometimes they build a new battleground where the competition becomes less relevant. Now come to the second good strategy that I'm going to talk about, which is occupying the gap. Occupying a gap in branding is essentially the business equivalent of the principle win without fighting, popularized in the art of war. Instead of competing head on where everyone is already fighting price, features, distribution, a brand shifts the battlefield entirely. By identifying an underserved value, it makes competitors irrelevant rather than defeated. There is no direct clash because the brand is no longer playing the same game. This is why strong positioning feels effortless from the outside. The brand isn't winning by outperforming others in the same arena, but by choosing a space where competition itself breaks down. So, another great example of making competition irrelevant by occupying a gap is the Whole Truth. What they realized was that the Indian protein market had two big problems. First, people were increasingly skeptical about what was actually inside protein products, especially around additives, misleading claims, ingredient transparency, and the second category was still heavily coded towards serious gym users, even though the protein demand was expanding beyond just professional athletes and bodybuilders. The Whole Truth built itself around clean label, ingredient transparency, and also pushed the idea that protein is for regular people, not just gym bros. Okay, now let's talk about the third war principle or the tactic, which is to avoid strength, attack weakness. Okay. Done. In warfare, commanders never attack enemy's strongest point head on. They maneuver to find the weak flank, like a water flowing to the lowest point rather than a mountain. In business, the same principle drives the competitive victory. It is a waste of resources to go head to head against a rival's core strength. Find where they underserve customers, where they are slow to innovate, and where their reputation has cracks, then concentrate your firepower there. One of the best example that I can come up strategy of avoiding strength and attacking weakness is fog. Instead of competing with deodorant brands on the fragrance or lifestyle appeal, Fog attacked a core weakness. Most sprays were largely gas and did not last long. By highlighting a non-gas and positioning itself as a long-lasting, it reframed the category from smell to value per use. The result was simple but powerful. It did not beat competitors at their own game. It changed what the game was about. And Fog is such a nostalgic brand for us, like any Gen Z. We have seen this happening where people used to ask kya chal raha hai, and everyone used to like give the same reply that they have seen in the ads, like Fog chal raha hai. So this is a great example. Okay, now let's cover the fourth strategy, which is use deception and surprise. All warfare is based on deception. Appear weak when you're strong and strong when you're weak. Surprise is a force multiplier. The Trojan horse, Operation Bodyguard before D-Day, the elaborate deception that mislead the enemy about when, where, and how the blow would land. A well-timed surprise can throw superior opponents into chaos before they can mount any defense. Using deception and surprise to win in branding and positioning is a powerful tactic. Super U is a strong example of it. If you look at most protein bar or protein snacks, they usually present themselves in a very very predictable way. The branding feels serious, functional, and fitness driven. The packaging often overemphasizes protein, performance, and health, which makes the category feel technical and restrictive. Super U takes a different route. Instead of looking like a typical protein brand, it feels more like a fun snack brand. The colors are louder, the energy is more playful, the overall presentation feels more entertaining than clinical. It does not immediately signal gym culture or hardcore nutrition. That is where the surprise lies. That is strategically smart because the moment a brand stops looking like every other protein product, it stops inviting the same comparison. Super U is no longer just competing with protein bars on a functional level, it starts entering a mental space of snacks people pick because they look enjoyable, easy, and exciting. That shift matters because of many people, the biggest barrier of buying a protein product is not the product itself. It is the feeling that it is only made for fitness obsessed people. Super U reduces that barrier by making protein feel casual, mainstream, and culturally alive. So the deception here is not in the claim but is in the presentation. It hides the seriousness of category behind fun, taste, and pop appeal. And by doing that, it changes the battlefield entirely. Super U is not just selling protein, it is packaging functionality inside entertainment. So I'm going to really help you explain this part much more in an interesting manner. So imagine this. Look at this matrix chart. No, not even this matrix chart. Look at this simple visual aid where at one extreme we have this all functional protein bars which look very healthy and clinical, and on the other side we have our indulgence chocolate like Dairy Milk by Cadbury, Nestle Kit Kat, and all the other good stuff. So what Super U is actually doing, it is trying to not position themselves with other protein bars, rather they are trying to position themselves very much near to Kit Kat or Dairy Milk. So what it actually does, it signals something very different. So now it's not competing on the protein or the product quality itself, right? Now it's competing with Kit Kat, where their victory is guaranteed. So another strong example of deception in branding is Co by Colgate. Toothpaste has always been seen as utility product, something functional, routine, and forgettable. The Co by Colgate challenged that by refusing to look like a toothpaste. Instead, it borrowed the design language of premium skincare cosmetics. The result was a product that felt less like oral care, more like self-care. That is the strategic kick. When you make a boring category borrow the codes of an aspirational one, you change how people value it before they even use it. The same principle like Super U. Now let's move to our next war strategy, which is all about speed and timing. Swift, agile action as strategic advantage. So there's a lot of things in this module. The OODA principle: observe, orient, decide, act faster than your opponent can react. Or the first mover's advantage: first brands into emerging trend, capture audience before rivals can arrive. Or the adaptability strategy as living adaptable entity, not a fixed plan made brittle by rigidity. So I'm going to focus on only two qualities: the adaptability and the agility. So these are the only two qualities that your brand should have. And obviously speed is important. You must react very fast. So let me give you an example. Take Netflix. It started off as a DVD by mail business. People could order DVDs, get them delivered, watch them, and send them back. And that model worked for that time. But Netflix was fast enough to see where the market was moving. Internet was getting cheaper. Devices were becoming more accessible. And consumer behavior was starting to shift. So instead of staying stuck to the DVD model, they moved into streaming. That is what gave them strategic advantage. At the same time, brands like Blockbuster, they did not move fast enough. They stayed too committed to their existing model. Eventually, they collapsed and went bankrupt. And even today, Netflix is constantly reinventing itself. It did not stop at streaming. It moved into original content. More recently, it has also started entering the gaming space. So the brand keeps evolving based on where attention, technology, and behavior are going. Instagram is another strong example. Although it started as photo location sharing app, it did not stay limited to that identity for long. It kept evolving based on how users were behaving and what competitive market was demanding. It moved from simple photo sharing into stories, then into more creator-led behavior. In doing so, it kept adapting itself against competitors like Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, and many other fast-moving startups. So both Netflix and Instagram show the same principle. The brands that survive and win are usually not the ones that stay loyal to one positioning forever. They are the ones that keep iterating, keep responding to shifts in technology and consumer behavior, and keep changing before the market forces them to. Okay, now let's move to the next war strategy, which is thorough preparation and planning. And this is my personal favorite, to be honest, and you will know why. Every battle is won before it is fought. So, a general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. Sun Tzu. The Allies' D-Day invasion was planned down to the last detail. Tides, weather windows, decoy operations, supply chain, troop positioning. That meticulous preparation was not overhead. It was the victory itself, achieved before a single soldier set a foot on the beach. Poor planning courts disaster. Armies that rushed into battle without adequate foresight faced ambushes, supply failure, and collapses. The same is true in brand campaigns. Only before launching into any competitive market, do the hard work. Analyze the terrain, market landscape, your troops, team and operational capacity, timing and seasonality, and your competitors' likely counter moves. Align campaigns with brand strategy and ensure consistency across every channel before going live. Avoid improvising your brand message under pressure. It is a signal of strategic weakness and your competitors will notice. Okay. For that, I'm going to show you something, which is like how I do this preparation and planning for my clients. Although I cannot share the confidential work I do for my clients, but I can definitely share the framework and template we follow for research, documentation, and strategic thinking. Over time, I have realized that unless everything is properly documented through a clear process, good branding rarely happens by accident. That is why we begin with a strategy deck. This is where we document everything that matters: the brand's objective, vision, mission, touch points, market context, competitors, customer reality. We study competitor profiles in depth, including their strength, weakness, verbal identity, visual identity, pricing, offer, positioning patterns. Only after that, we move into defining the ICP, or the ideal customer persona. We also study the category entry points. Where are the triggers, situation, and thoughts that can make brand mentally available in the customer's mind? So this is not a light document. It is a detailed and heavy strategic foundation that help us see the business clearly before we make creative decisions. This is what I call the strategy deck. It sits inside my 4-phase branding process. Phase 1 is discovery and documentation. Phase 2 is strategy and Phase 2 is strategy and creative direction. Phase 3 is ideation and design. Phase 4 is refinement and delivery. If you're curious in learning more about my branding process, let me know down in the comments. I'll make another video on that topic. Okay. Our next strategy is strategic alliances, divide and conquer. Coalition building as force multiplication. War is rarely fought alone. The Allied powers defeated large foes by combining forces. Sun Tzu highlighted using diplomatic means to disrupt the enemy's alliances before resorting to direct conflict, effectively dividing their strength before the first engagement. Secure strong allies, you multiply your own strength. Isolate your enemy from their allies, they collapse from within, without a single frontal assault required. This is when the two brands that are strong in different domains come together to create a strong market position, rather than either could build alone. Sony and Zeiss are classic examples where one brings imaging scale and the other brings optical credibility. The same pattern appears in Vivo's partnership with Zeiss or others, Airtel's partnership with Perplexity. In each case, both brands borrow something valuable from the other, whether that is trust, technology, distribution, or cultural relevance. That is what makes strategic alliances so effective. One brand fills the gap of another, and together they expand faster and compete harder. The second tactic is divide and conquer. In branding, this means not trying to serve the entire market with one brand, but splitting the market into different needs and winning each segment separately. Match Group is one of the best examples of this. Instead of building one dating app for everyone, It owns multiple platforms like Tinder, Hinge, and OkCupid, each designed for different user mindset, relationship intent, and or audience type. This is what divide and conquer looks like in branding. You break one big market into smaller battles and then build separate brands to dominate each one. One tactic is about joining forces to grow stronger, while the other is about spreading across the market to capture more ground. And this is quite relevant in legacy brands. You look at P&G or Hindustan Unilever, they have this army of brands under them, right? And they use them to capture the maximum scale of the market. Now, let's come to our last war strategy, which is the bonus tactics, which I call imitation. In branding, copy paste is not about plagiarism, but also about strategically adapting proven models for newer markets, different segments with a unique taste, with unique twists. It's leveraging successful blueprints to accelerate market entry and disrupt incumbents without having to invent the entire category wheel. This tactic bypasses high risk, high cost innovation phase by learning from what already works. It allows agile brands to enter mature markets with validated business model, often delivering better experience or value proposition. So we have two things, like you can pause and read it like if you're interested, right? So first is model adaptation, second is localize and launch, and third is differentiate and iteration. This can turn an ordinary concept into a minimalist yet superior offering. Many wars are not won by invention, but by studying past victories and repeating what already worked. The same logic applies to branding. Instead of always trying to be radically different, many brands win by strategic imitation. They observe successful players, decode what's driving their growth, and adapt it to their own context. Take minimalist. It borrowed heavily from global brands like Ordinary, ingredient-led naming, clinical transparency, and no-nonsense packaging, and applied it to the Indian market at the right time. That the insight is simple: when a model is already validated, imitation reduces risk and accelerate adoption. It's not copying blindly, it's learning from proven wins and executing them with contextual intelligence. So recently I heard this news, although I have made a video criticizing Blably Blue, but I cannot ignore this fact that they recently hit 100 crore ARR. And I have to say, like, they are intelligent and clever, that they used imitation strategy to their advantage. Now they are like slowly changing their packaging as well to dodge this criticism that they have copied Born to Stand Out. So it works. So that is it from my side. I know this video is really long, and I suck at speaking in front of the camera as I'm pretty new to this format of making content. Trust me, like, I'm working on myself and I'm going to improve and I'm going to make better content for you guys. And thank you for watching my video. And do let me know your feedbacks and how I can improve my video and what kind of videos you would like to see. Bye.